readers,
reviewers,
countrymen,
lend us your ears. And a huge thank you to all of our Patreons.
Thank you to the Pit Fighters, the First Swords, and all of the Bright Stars, Truth and Courage.
Hello and welcome back to the channel. We are the Brothers Gwyn and myself, we're my brother Ed, and today we're here for a monthly wrap up. We're going to be talking about what we read during the month of February. So if you watched our last video, I would have said the same thing. I've got something on my teeth which is a little bit painful, and also it interrupts my speaking a bit. It makes it a bit harder to say words. Some words anyway, so I may be speaking a bit less today, so Ed will be taking the lead, hopefully.
Those dentists and Gurkle did you dirty.
But now let's get on into the video. And Ed, what was the first book you read in February?
It was a great month, February, obviously, albeit a shorter month, but we still got lots and lots of reading done. So yeah, I really enjoyed February. I got some good reads, I'm sure you have as well, and we had some big things for the channel which we will discuss later on. But the first book I read was The Night Watchman by Louise Erdrich. Now I was looking at reading some more Native American indigenous voices, and Louise Erdrich is at the top of the pile on everyone's lists when it comes to that kind of book. And this is a fiction book, but taken on the story of her grandfather, Louise Erdrich's grandfather. So it's set on a reservation, and it's all about the 1953 Emancipation Bill by the US government, which is basically taking away land from Native Americans. And a group of Native American people on this reservation try and kind of team up, and they try and go against this emancipation bill, trying to get more rights for their reservation and other people as well. So it's a great book. Louise Erdrich has a lovely writing voice. It had kind of not a Stephen King vibe, but just the way that he is able to craft characters in the same town where everyone's so different, but also he really links them together. It's brilliant in that aspect. I really, really enjoyed it. Obviously, I like the historical backdrop as well. It feels like an important book to read, and it feels like an important piece of history. And I really think that it's worth reading for everyone. So yeah, definitely, I'm definitely going to be reading lots more Louise Erdrich in the future. Very nice. A good way to kick off the month, it sounds like. And we both read The Judas Blossom by Stephen Orion. We're very lucky to be given early access through an ARC. And we can't say anything about it because we've signed a waiver to... Yeah, well, not quite, but... we made the unbreakable vow. We basically did, and so we can't talk about this until mid-May. We'll probably leave it a little bit longer. The release is the 11th of July, so we will have a review that we'll record now. Yeah. But we'll put it out in a few months, whilst the details are fresh. And then we'll put it out in a few months when everyone can see it. And so this is historical fantasy, and we can't say anything in detail, but... we loved it. Yeah, I would say pre-order it now because you're not going to want to miss out, and this book's going to sell out quick. It would be a safe bet. 100%. The next one for me then was Thomas Berger's Little Big Man. Now this is kind of a monumental book of Native American historical fiction, and Little Big Man follows the story of a young boy who is abducted or is kidnapped by a band of Native Americans, and then by the Cheyenne, and then he goes back and forth between white society and then Native Americans as well. And he gets everywhere, this character. He is in so many important events. I really like Jack Crab, as in the way that's the main character. I like the way that he was written in terms of the voice, but I just wasn't the biggest fan of Jack Crab as a character. I feel like the things he did, I mean, it added up with the time period, but I just couldn't get behind him very much, and that's probably what took the book from a 5-star book down to a 4-star book for me. But I still really enjoyed it. There were lots of great historical moments, key characters here, very famous ones from history, little nods and Easter eggs that you will kind of pick up on if you read that, if you know a little bit about that period. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it, and I'm definitely glad I read it because it's a book that everyone recommends, says you need to read if you like this kind of genre. It is a Western, but unlike any Western I've read, really. Would it be one that you may not enjoy as much if it's your first kind of dive into that historical period? I don't know. I think it's just a me thing, really. It's just a me thing. So I would definitely recommend it to lots more people. But if you're going to read a Western, I definitely think True Grit is the first one to do. Very nice. And next up, I have another book that we both read, and that is The Tyranny of Faith by Richard Swan. And so we did a review for this on the channel, which you can check out for our deeper thoughts. Hopefully a little bit more insightful than the 20 seconds we're about to talk about it here. Well, it's great. There you go. There we go. So this is a sequel. We really thoroughly enjoyed The Justice of Kings, and you should buy that as well.
And the Tyranny of Faith, if you ever read book 1, this is where it gets a bit more epic. We're journeying to the capital, the heart of the Soviet Empire, and there's some more political machinations. We're carrying on from the intrigues of book 1, but a lot of new events and hooks to get you into the story for book 2 as well. So yeah, the Tyranny of Faith, I thought it took what was done really well in book 1 and it elevated it and carried on what I really enjoyed about this series. And so yeah, I really cannot wait until book 3.
And rereading Red Rising trilogy, it was Golden Sun's turn to be under the microscope this time, and Golden Sun is probably my favourite book of the 3.
The read along on My Book Reviews.
Yeah, and it's my favourite of the 3 books. Probably, I'm looking forward to getting to Morning Star in March. But yeah, I really enjoyed this. I love being back with the characters, and it's great on a reread. It's even better than before. Even though this book is features lots and lots of twists and turns and betrayals and whatnot, and even though I knew what was coming, it was awesome to kind of pick out those key moments that I thought, that these where Pierce Brown was sowing the seeds of what was going to happen. So yeah, I really, really enjoyed it, and I loved Golden Sun. I love being back with Darrow and Severo and all of the others. It's a lot of fun, but there's a lot of heartbreak as well. It starts off with Darrow he goes from a Gary Stu, Mary Sue kind of character, and then Pierce Brown just kind of completely switches that, so he's on the back foot, and I really enjoyed that aspect of this.
Ragnar's in book 2 as well, isn't he?
Yes, he is.
Oh, I love Ragnar. Awesome character. Next up, I read Soulsmith, and this is book 2 of the Cradle series. So I read book 1 on Kindle, and then loads of people were like, the book's underrated by Travis Baldree, the author of Legends and Lattes. You must listen to it. So I tried book 2, and so Cradle is a series written by Will White, and it's known as progression fantasy, which I don't think I've really read before, but it's meant to be so in the sense that the character levels up over time, but it doesn't feel like a game, but that's kind of the idea throughout the series. And so yeah, I listened to book 2, great. Travis Baldree does a brilliant job, and I really enjoyed it. I think it's great to know that as I go on with this series, I can kind of alternate between the Kindle audiobook, or if I have a month full of physical reads, I can go to the audiobook, or vice versa. And so yeah, it's good to be able to be flexible and know that you can depend on the series in both formats. And so yeah, I thought it took what I really enjoyed of Unsold and did the same again. Really widens the scope of the world. I love how Will White seems like he's got a great plan coming along, and there's little hooks for what might come in the future, and I'm very intrigued to see what happens.
Dun dun dun. And the next one for me was David Gemmell's another reread, which is Midnight Falcon, book 2 of the Regante. I haven't read the other Regante duology. I consider them duologies really, because there's 2 books after Midnight Falcon which are set hundreds of years into the future. So I think Faith in the Fallen and Of Blood and Bone, they're not the same series, but they can be. They're definitely very, very much linked, aren't they? And people recommend you read the latter if you've read the former. Midnight Falcon, it originally was my favourite Regante book. I think on a reread I preferred Sword in the Storm, just because of Conover. I don't know why. Just this time I preferred Midnight Falcon, not Midnight Falcon, Sword in the Storm. But I absolutely adore Midnight Falcon. Bane is probably my favourite character. I just love the way that David Gemmell writes him, and he's got such, he's got such a sympathetic backstory, as well as such a forward marching arc as well, and I absolutely love those moments that David Gemmell kind of seeds in. I just wish David Gemmell wrote bigger books, because I think there was potential here for so much more in the Regante. So that's what I'm discovering on my reread, that I think he made these amazing characters, crafted these wonderful relationships, and he could have had even more sweet moments, even more heartbreaking moments, if he just took his time a little bit. It is very much action orientated, but with lots of character moments in between, and that's why I think the Faith in the Fallen Papa Gwyn gets the perfect mix there, because obviously they're chunkier books, they follow more POVs for one start, but also there are a lot of sweet moments in between where the relationships are fully developed and fully realised, aren't they? So, and that's why I think David Gemmell, I would just wish he did slightly bigger books where I could read even more, which is always a good thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's always a good thing when you're wanting more pages, as long as it's not too short, or you're saying the story wasn't fully developed.
No, the story was developed. I just wish the character, there were more character work.
Yeah, awesome. So next up, I have another read that I don't have physically. I've read this on Kindle, and it is Imperium by Robert Harris. and this was for the read along with Library of Alexandria. And so I'm a little bit behind because they're meant to be reading book 2 in February, and I read book 1, but I'm trying to catch up. And so this is historical fiction following the figure of Cicero, who is a historical figure, and he was very instrumental and present during the rise of Julius Caesar. Who's that? So it's very interesting. This is the early days, and Cicero kind of forming a name for himself. And so, it was written brilliantly. It's like a courtroom drama for part of it, and kind of all the speeches are brilliant, and the twists and turns as we see kind of the backdrop, and how there's so much that people don't realise is coming into play in the speeches, but it's little digs at people that you know from the exchanges in the background. And it's written brilliantly, great character work, and just very intriguing writing. And Robert Harris is a great writer.
Very nice. I look forward to reading that very soon. And the next one for me was, as you can see, is a bit of a Western month, but this is a Lakota Western. Joseph Marshall III is a member of the Oglala Lakota, and he has written this book called 100 in the Hand, which is following the story of Crazy Horse through his friend Cloud. And this story takes on the 1966 Fetterman Massacre, or the Fetterman Fight, as we should probably call it, and which is where... Well, actually, I won't tell you where. If you've read a little bit about this history, then you would know a little bit about that fight. It was quite a monumental fight, really, and a very, very big moment of the Lakota history. But I really like the way that Joseph Marshall, he writes historical fiction. Obviously, he can have insights into the life of the Lakota that other people cannot, unless they have been told orally through the tribe and the band and all that kind of stuff. So I really like that Joseph M. Marshall has those authentic details, really, that no one else could actually have. And I really, really love reading this. It's quite a short book, so it's very easy to read, but he's got a nice writing voice. I listened to an audio as well, which is where he narrates it, and I really like his voice, so that's really cool.
Very nice.
I very much enjoyed it. But if you want to read a Western with kind of a Native American main character, central character, then this is the series to definitely check out.
There's a lot of these that I need to pick up, and so next up I have The Dragon Republic by R.F. Kuang. This is book 2 of the Poppy War trilogy. So the Poppy War, there's bits I thought were absolutely brilliant, and there are detractors, like I didn't think it felt realistic at times, but I thought there's enough to really enjoy that I'll carry on with the series, especially as I absolutely love Babel, which R.F. Kuang released last year. So I tried The Dragon Republic, and I'm glad I did, because I preferred it a lot. I thought it was a lot better, it felt a lot more realistic in the sense of some things may not be militarily realistic, but that didn't bother me as much. It was more in the first book of our main character suddenly becoming the greatest at martial arts ever, even though they haven't trained at all, and beating people trained their entire life. So that is just a me thing, but it triggered me. But that doesn't happen in book 2, where it feels like it's earned, and the magic system comes more into play, so that when kind of crazy things like that happen and the main character comes out on top, then it's explainable. I can think, you know what, magic's at play here. And often she doesn't come out on top as well, so that's a big factor as well. But I thought it was a lot better, just because it carried on with what I really enjoyed, but then ironed out what I saw as flaws, which for most people aren't, but it was a me thing again. But it wasn't present in book 2 in my opinion. So I really enjoyed it. So maybe if you agreed with me and didn't enjoy the Poppy War, I agree trying book 2. Because it was really worth it, and I'm looking forward to reading book 3.
Very nice. And the next one for me was Youngbloods by Simon Scarrow. Now I've heard that Simon Scarrow does lots and lots of Roman historical fiction, and Roman historical fiction just isn't really up my street, to be honest, unless I'm reading from another person's point of view, so they're from a different culture. But I loved Youngbloods because this is focusing on Napoleon and Arthur Wesley, the Duke of Wellington. Obviously, we know that Napoleon and Wellington fought at the Battle of Waterloo, which was probably maybe the second or the third most famous battle of all time. What would you say the first is?
Well, it depends where you're from, isn't it? Because 300 globally. Obviously, I think in Europe, the Battle of Hastings.
I think Battle of Hastings probably.
But I'm not sure so much in the States if that's as famous.
Yeah, that's true actually.
It may be a battle in the Civil War they would choose.
Yeah, Gettysburg. Maybe. Yeah.
It all depends where you're from, doesn't it?
That'd be a fun video, the most famous battles of history. But anyway, so this is kind of it's a historical fiction, but those two characters, Napoleon, and Arthur Wesley are the two main characters, and they follow them from the day they are born up until, obviously the book's called Youngblood, so they are young generals making a name for themselves. Napoleon is a charismatic, clever, aggressive young man, and he is written superbly. Arthur has a slightly less talent, and people are very doubtful of him, which is very ironic considering what he does later on in his life. And I absolutely love the way they are written. Simon Scarrow, I mean, really not too much happens in terms of plot, but lots happens in terms of their life. I think it's so hard to write a biography about a character in a historical fiction format, because you've got to follow, especially in the 19th and 18th centuries, you've got to follow all the events of their life. Otherwise, the scholar's going to kick off.
Because there's a lot more journeys about their lives.
Exactly, we know so much more. It's not like the Last Kingdom series where you can fill in what Alfred the Great did. Where you just have, he did this year. But, we know exactly where Arthur Wesley was born. We know exactly where Napoleon was born, what date, what happened to them in their lives. So to keep that story fresh, engaging, fun, and also really grounded in terms of politics and also, action and character-driven moments, is such a good job. And Simon Scarrow did a perfect job. And I would really highly recommend this if you're, I've never read any books really set in this time period. It's not really my time period, obviously, as I'm a history buff. It's not something that I've been buzzing about, but it's something that I just wanted to check out a little bit more. But I'd really recommend that, because Simon Scarrow is such a brilliant writer that he managed to make it so fun and engaging, and I absolutely adored it. So I can't wait to read book 2 next month.
Very nice, yeah, because you were talking about that, and it is very infectious, kind of how much you're enjoying it. And so, yeah, it's definitely been added to my list, which is probably my favourite phrase during these monthly wrap-ups.
So definitely your most used, isn't it?
Most used. And so next up I have The Lessons Never Learned, Some More Fantasy by Rob J. Hayes. This is book 2 in the War Eternal series. And I also read book 3, which is Cold Ashes Risen, which I read, I finished it in the first few hours of March the 1st. But I've already read it by this video, so I'll talk about it in the February wrap-up. Cool. And so, yeah, I listened to them both audiobook, and I thought they're both great. Book 2 is probably my favourite of the series so far. There's 5 instalments, so I've got 2 to go. Rob J. Hayes is a great writer he's not afraid to take fantasy in a new, fresh direction. And often for authors that could be risky, because so often the viewership, they want certain events to happen because that's what would be most satisfying. They're thinking, I want a resolution, I want a confrontation between these characters or this place. But Rob J. Hayes manages to divert from that, but still supply a satisfying and engaging read, which is really hard to do. And I think that's one of his many skills as a writer. And his prose as well is great. It's very easy to read, very easy to follow, very witty, and a great cast of, it's quite a small cast of characters in an epic plot, but they're done really, really well, and I love the character dynamics.
It's funny, you definitely have like fancy beats, don't you? Whereas if I'm reading a historical fiction book or watching TV, like a drama, I would think this would happen next in a fantasy book, but that's not.
Very different, yeah.
So it is really different. It's funny that what the direction of an author would take in terms of fantasy.
Yeah.
But when they take it in a new direction, it's always fresh and fun.
Just got to add, of course, our monthly thank you to our new Bright Stars.
Thank you so much, Christina and Jen B. You guys are amazing. You are the real Bright Stars.
Absolutely awesome.
Not me or Will.
Not us. Well, you are.
You're the Black Sun.
You'll see on Discord that I think Ed's actually going to call me that, but we'll fight that battle another time. But anyway, thank you so much to our new Bright Stars over on our Patreon.
Truth and Courage. And the next one for me was The Shootist by Glenn, I think his name's Swarthout. But yeah, so this is a Western, and it starts a little bit off like the film El Dorado, if you've seen that with John Wayne, but this is another John Wayne film, actually one of his very last. I believe it might even be his last film. But it is about an old gunslinger who has a terminal illness, and he holds up in this town, and he's very infamous. And then there are 3 people who are searching for him to try and kill him and end his days, to be the ones who killed this man. And it is a fantastic book. I really, really loved it. There's something about the prose in a Western that just automatically pulls me in. I love the way that the characters engage with each other. The conversations are always witty and quirky, but also full of emotion as well. So that's what I find. That's what I really love about Westerns. And I really love the main character. I really cannot wait to watch the John Wayne film. I love John Wayne films, so that will definitely be up my street. But yeah, The Shootist is definitely something I'd recommend if you want something that is kind of almost like a traditional Western, but then it's flipped on its head, definitely. So it's got those character, those beats in terms of hold up in a saloon in a small town and all that. You've got criminals and hardened gangs, that kind of stuff. If you like that, then definitely read The Shootist.
Yeah, so it's a bit tropey, but in a good way.
But, it flips the tropes, though. It feels almost tropey, but then it takes a new direction. Exactly.
Very cool. And so next up, I read Volume 1 of The Sandman, so I'm now on Volume 2, which you can see by this bookmark here. But yes, I read Volume 1, which is, I thought, really good, and I committed sacrilege and I've watched the programme for Series 1.
Yeah.
And so this is, at least the first volume, is very true. Well, the adaptation was very true to this. There's some bits that are stripped out. Like there's a lot of links to the DC world, which I did not know until I started reading this. And so there's DC characters, and it says DC on it, but I just... I wasn't looking at that. I was thinking the Sandman, and so
you're thinking what?
The Sandman, and so yeah, that surprised me, but in a good way. And I'd say this is actually the program. There's some very weird ideas which were great, but strange. There's even weirder ones in here, and it's great. I love the creativity. I love the weirdness, and it really just shines through in the Sandman. So yeah,
Neil Gaiman's got a very fruitful mind.
He really does. That's a nice way to put it, Ed.
Thank you. I almost said fruity, but that'd be different. The next one for me is Taiko by Eiji Yoshikawa. This is almost 1,000 pages, and it was an epic book talking about the Civil War, the Sengoku Jidai period of Japan, 1600 it was around. So this is the story of 3 great war leaders during that period of Japan, and it is focusing on Hideyoshi, and it's also focusing on Oda Nobunaga and also Tokugawa Ieyasu. So this book was written in the 40s, I believe, and it definitely feels like that. If you like Shogun, then I think you should read this book. If you absolutely love Shogun, I'd say try Shogun first. If you are obsessed with Japan, if you want to write something, set in this time period where you want to look at the tactics and the battles and that kind of stuff, then read this as well. But I think it was quite mid for me because it's a big book, so you want to be fully invested. It felt very caricature. Sometimes when you watch films from the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, everyone's a little bit melodramatic, aren't they? And I think that's probably what made John Wayne such a good actor of that time period, because he was never melodramatic. Everyone around him pretty much was. But yeah, so the main characters are very caricature, I believe. And it just kind of took me out. Historical fiction is all about immersion, I feel. And in terms of, authentic dialogue, historical moments, and also character arcs, this didn't feel very immersive because it was very choppy, very stop and start, very changing, very swapping around. The dialogue felt very modern, but in like a 40s 50s way, so it's obviously, I think it's not aged the best, but I definitely recommend it if people love Japan, if people want to read much more of this author Eiji Yoshikawa. I'd like to read Musashi as well, but we'll see if it has the same kind of ideas. I think that was actually written in the 30s, that one, so who knows. But yeah, so I think it could have been, I could have loved it a lot more. What I wish, it might be sacrilege, but what I wish was that it was written by a more modern author, maybe, in terms of there's lots of historical fiction out there, so people are having to to write a book this big and this successful, it has to be great. So maybe a modern author's approach or something like that as well probably would have hooked me a bit more, which is not to say that I don't like classical stuff, because I absolutely love the classics, but yeah, this book just didn't land with me, unfortunately.
It's a shame, Ed.
It's a shame, but I still enjoyed it. But I just I thought I was going to be obsessed with it and be
That's the thing about going with expectations when a book is so hyped up, isn't
exactly, yeah. But yeah, I still enjoyed it.
I've gone through all my books.
Oh, all right then. So the next one for me was 13 Moons by Charles Frazier, which is another Western book. This is the story of a young boy who then is he leaves his family really, and he goes into a different part of America, and he has to kind of make a life for himself. And he encounters lots of characters on the way, but he is holed up by kind of an Indian fort, really, where, and he's on almost on a reservation. He meets lots and lots of different Native Americans. And I really, really enjoyed this. I think Charles Fraser has a lovely way of writing. He's got a great writing voice. The main character was written so well. I really enjoyed his anecdotes. At times, when the prose is kind of flipping back and forth in, between story to story, like...
what, POVs or timelines?
No, as in, so there's one POV and he's like talking about his life.
Yeah.
And then he's flipping between different, different things that this reminds me of this time in my life.
Right, tangential.
Exactly. So it felt a little bit tangential at times as well, which kind of took me out a little bit, but I really enjoyed the characters. I really he meets kind of two father figures who are both Native Americans, and I really like their philosophies as well and their interactions with the main character. This is based on a real character in history, and he was a big supporter of Native American rights as well, and he tried his best to kind of, it's like the Emancipation Bill I was talking about earlier by the US government. He was going against things like that took rights away from Native Americans. So, I really enjoyed all the different historical moments. I think it was a good book. He wrote Cold Mountain as well, which is considered a masterpiece, so I would definitely read that very soon as well. But yeah, definitely recommend 13 Moons if you have the time and you want to read something that's quite a sweeping arc of a journey that is a little bit of a love letter to the old frontier, or what it was back then.
Very nice.
And you finished, haven't you? So
I have.
Right, the next one for me was another reread. Again, another Western. This is The Sun by Philip Meyer. I'm getting back into writing again, so this is why I've been reading lots of kind of Western themed books. And The Sun is one of my favourites by Philip Meyer, and it has 3 storylines, and it is basically the story of Texas, which is... there is one character who was abducted by a band of Comanche, and he's raised as one of them. And then you have his grandson later on during the cattle wars between the Mexicans and the Texans. And then you have later on his great-great-granddaughter, who is kind of a businesswoman with all of that money. She is kind of like a character out of Yellowstone, I would say, which we started watching very recently, didn't we? So, it feels like that kind of, industrial age, modernity is approaching, and she is trying to, she's got lots and lots of money, so she's a very powerful woman. But I really like the 3 POVs. I love the way that Philip Meyer writes the band of Comanche, the way that Eli is raised into them and indoctrinated, and that's what I love about The Sun. So yeah, definitely recommended. I know I've spoken a lot about it on the channel,
but for good reason. In your opinion.
And I've got 2 more. Sorry, Will.
It's all right.
The next one
I'll just sit here, shall I?
Was Fool's Crow by James Welch, and this is again about Native American. This is about the Native American Blackfeet band, and this is again about US governmental bills taking rights away from the Blackfeet. It follows one young man called Fool's Crow. That's 3 times. So
I'm really sorry.
Can you not hide them? When I yawn, just go close your mouth.
I'll just walk off.
No, you don't.
I'll just walk off.
That's not hiding. That's saying I'm going to...
Well, at least you were masking.
Okay.
Masking.
Just do that.
We'll just hide
it. So Fool's Crow is a great book. It's got lots of heartbreak, and it follows a young man called Fool's Crow in the Blackfeet tribe, where there are lots and lots of different threads going on. There is the US government taking away land and moving in as well, and taking away trade and taking away food, and encouraging the Blackfeet to go to farm and to go onto reservations. And then you have also Fool's Crow. One of his friends gets involved in a kind of a band that are kind of out for vengeance, and he gets sucked into that, and Fool's Crow is in the middle of all of this with lots and lots of threads going on. So I really enjoyed it. James Welch writes Native Americans fantastically. He's got such a great voice as well. He is an Indigenous member, so I think that he has, again, like Joseph Marshall, a grip on the language, on the actual matter of that time period. And I really loved that about Fool's Crow. I've read it before, but I definitely really recommend it to people. And then the last one for me was In the Rogue Blood by James Carlos Blake. This is a book I've wanted to read for a very long time. The only book I can compare it to is Blood Meridian, because it's set in exactly the same time period and almost a similar kind of plot. It is the Mexican War of Independence.
Is this the author who said that he wrote it and then he thought?
So yeah, he
read Blood Meridian. He's like,
yeah, I think he was about 4/5 through writing this, and then one of his friends gave him Blood Meridian, and he said, "What the hell? I've written the same book." But the comparisons in terms of violence are there. The comparison in terms of themes are also there. The writing, very, very different. This is much more like a story rather than an odyssey, and I really, really think that in the Rogue Blood, it's incredibly dark, but in a different way to Count McCarthy. It's a lot more blunt with darkness and the awfulness that happens, and I definitely wouldn't recommend this as much as Blood Meridian, because it feels very not over the top, because it's exactly what happened, but it feels just at times it is overwhelming in terms of the brutality. It is focusing on two brothers who are not averse to violence. They are very bad people. They are young, and they go on these journeys where eventually they get split up, and they go, and this is where James Carlos Blake is able to kind of write about two aspects of the old America. And I think that this book probably won't be a hit with many people. I really enjoyed lots of aspects about it. There's a lot to not enjoy because it is such a horrible book to read at times. So it's hard to review. I'm unable to give it a star rating just because of that reason. It's one of those few books that you feel like you can't actually really sum up in a review, really. But yeah, it's intimidating to read. But if you like Blood Meridian, and if you want to read a book that has kind of, it's almost a cousin to it, then definitely check this out.
Very nice, Ed. Wow, you read a lot in February.
Lots of spare time. And thank you very much for watching our wrap up. Sorry I was harking on so much. Will's just given me a bit of a telling off, but I'm sorry.
I haven't.
It hasn't really. But no, thank you so much for watching that.
And then a few events for February. So we opened the Discord, which is awesome. People requested for a little while that we open one. And as we start this video, there are 180 people in there. So thank you so much to everyone who's joined. It's awesome chatting about books to you, about your current reads, different genres, what you'd like to see on the channel, and more. And so if you're interested in that, do go head over to that. There's a link in the description below. And what else is going on? We are doing a read-along, and it'll be the first proper read-along on the channel, and we're doing that. We're organising it through Discord, but we'll also be talking about it a lot on this channel. And so it is for Boudica by Amanda Scott. It's a quartet historical fiction, and it'll be one book a month. And so Dreaming the Eagle in March, and then all the way to the final one will be in June. And so of course we'll be talking about it throughout the month on the Discord, but also at the end of each month we will do a review for that individual book. And so yeah, Dreaming the Eagle review will be coming out at the end of March or early April. And
it's been really fun to talk to people on the Discord about books, and we really look forward to talk to people about Boudica as well. It's going to be lots and lots of fun. But thank you very much for watching our video on the Brothers Gwyn channel today. We were talking about our February reads. Please let us know what you read in February, and what books do you want us to read on the channel and do a review of. Please let us know in the comments below. We hope to see you there.
Truth and courage.
Truth and courage.
The Brothers Gwyn.
The Brothers Gwyn.